Welcome back to today's Explainer. Look, we are unpacking some incredibly dense geopolitical developments today, specifically from June 20, 2026. We're talking high-stakes negotiations, active military conflicts, widespread civil unrest. It is a lot. So our goal today is to just cut right through that noise and give you a direct, neutral, comprehensive look at the facts on the ground. Let's get right into it.
Here's the agenda for today. First, the U.S.-Iran diplomatic standoff. Second, we'll look at the Israel-Hezbollah border escalation. Third is global anti-regime unrest. And finally, number 4, world finance and climate.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the U.S.-Iran diplomatic standoff and navigating this crucial 60-day window.
So, right now, there is this massive diplomatic mobilization happening over in Bergenstock, Switzerland. Key players are literally rushing to salvage a super fragile 60-day memorandum of understanding. Face-to-face formats had to be rapidly rescheduled, which brought a high-level Iranian delegation right to the table. And, well, they aren't alone. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance flew in alongside the head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi. Plus, we're seeing some really intense trilateral mediation involving Qatari envoys, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and Army Chief Munir. Honestly, this incredibly crowded negotiating table just highlights exactly how high the stakes are for global stability right now.
But outside that negotiating room, a real-world information war is totally raging over the Strait of Hormuz. On one hand, Iran's military command actually declared the vital waterway reclosed, and they cited Israel's operations in southern Lebanon as the justification. However, U.S. Central Command immediately pushed back on that. Captain Tim Hawkins firmly rejected the claim, stating flat out that Iran doesn't control the strait and that traffic is currently flowing.
And you know what? The U.S. has the receipts to back that up. According to their surveillance, exactly 55 commercial merchant vessels successfully navigated the waterway on Saturday. 55. To put that in perspective, that's over 17 million barrels of oil moving right through what's supposed to be a blockaded artery. So as of right now, the traffic and a massive chunk of the global oil supply is absolutely still flowing.
Adding some massive economic leverage to this whole mix, President Trump, speaking from Camp David, actually threatened to impose unilateral U.S. shipping tolls if a permanent deal isn't finalized within the 60-day window. He framed this as essentially reimbursement for the U.S. acting as a guardian angel to Middle Eastern shipping lines. Basically, the clock is ticking and the pressure is on.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Israel-Hezbollah border escalation and the defiance of ceasefires.
We're seeing some incredibly strict, defiant rhetoric here from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He vowed that the IDF will remain entrenched in their established security zone. He made it crystal clear that, despite all these international calls for de-escalation, the Israeli military fully intends to hold its positions to ensure the security of Israel's northern border. They are staying put as long as necessary.
Tragically, this localized conflict just crossed a really grim milestone: 4,000 documented fatalities. Despite all the diplomatic interventions we just talked about, heavy combat is still raging. Just recently, a wave of localized Israeli airstrikes tore through the southern city of Nabatea and the surrounding villages, resulting in 16 deaths, which heartbreakingly included 2 children.
And this violence is fiercely reciprocal. Overnight, amidst heavy projectile barrages, Staff Sergeant Nir Ben-Ari was killed in active combat in southern Lebanon. He's actually the 5th Israeli military casualty in just 48 hours, falling right after Hezbollah launched a massive barrage of over 50 projectiles across the border. It's a relentless kinetic reality on the ground right now.
Let's transition to Section 3, global anti-regime unrest, stretching from Paris all the way to Tehran.
Now this is where we see geopolitical tension spilling directly onto European streets. A highly anticipated Free Iran diaspora rally, which was expected to draw a staggering 100,000 people to Paris, was completely shut down at the 11th hour by a French judicial order. Why? Well, French intelligence cited 2 credible bomb threats, with one explicitly linked to the IRGC. But here's the thing: tens of thousands of unaware demonstrators still showed up. That led to violent clashes with police, resulting in 20 arrests and 12 people being seriously wounded.
And at the exact same time, inside Iran itself, the dissident network PMOI executed an astounding 45 coordinated operations. Coinciding with historical uprising anniversaries, we saw this massive wave of fires and incendiary attacks targeting state-backed ideological centers across major cities like Tehran and Karaj. It represents a highly organized physical resistance pushing back against the regime.
But it's not just ideological anymore. It is literally about basic survival. Iran is facing a catastrophic structural utility crisis. Independent reports show major agricultural regions are completely parched due to severe electricity and water imbalances. And because of this structural mismanagement, a first wave of localized female-led civilian protests is rising up. These aren't just political, they're driven purely by the immediate municipal failure to meet basic human needs. People are just trying to survive.
Finally, let's sweep up our last remaining updates in Section 4, World Finance and Climate, looking at some global odds and ends.
Pivoting over to global finance, we're looking at some major moves regarding the FATF. That's the Financial Action Task Force, the global watchdog that combats money laundering and terrorist financing. When a nation submits to FATF compliance, they are committing to sweeping, strict financial reforms. It's basically how they prove to the international community that their economy isn't a vehicle for illicit funds.
So looking at Iraq, their government has formally bowed to those high-level financial pressures and agreed to the strict FATF reforms. This means rolling out robust anti-money laundering measures and fundamentally restructuring the command elements of the Central Bank of Iraq. Meanwhile, turning homeward to the U.S., millions of residents in the Northeast are facing a radically different kind of threat. An unseasonably aggressive summer storm cell has triggered emergency tornado watches and severe flash flood alerts across New York's capital region and western Massachusetts. Residents there are being urged to seek secure shelter immediately.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this underlying structural tension. Can a 60-day diplomatic window really survive the sheer kinetic reality playing out across the globe today? I mean, from canceled rallies in Paris to lethal cross-border strikes in Lebanon and massive oil flotillas navigating a contested Strait of Hormuz, the friction is just palpable. We've laid out the facts, the players, and the numbers. The big open question now is whether the delegates in Switzerland can outpace the escalation happening everywhere else. Keep your eyes on these converging flashpoints. Thanks so much for exploring these sources with me today, and I'll catch you next time.